Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get going in just a few minutes, but I thought before then, while people are joining the call, we could hear from you guys. So there's a chat feature. If you wanted to share where you're joining from, if you want to share your name, and most importantly, why you're here today on the webinar, that would be great, and we could share that with people. I know we saw there were a lot of people from agencies, it seemed like. So if you guys want to say hello in the chat, that would be great. And if you're feeling shy, we can start and come back to you. It's no problem. All right. Well, we will move on for now. So let's head over to the next slide here. All right. So my name is Brennan, and I am the Hudson River Regional Youth Partner with Youth Power. And joining me today is Mika, and she is the Regional Youth Partner in the Central Region of the state. So we are going to do a little bit more of an introduction about ourselves in just a few minutes. We just wanted to talk about a few things real quick. So etiquette, housekeeping. So there's a lot of identities that we're going to be talking about and some acronyms during the webinar. So we are going to have a really short slide with some definitions. So don't worry, we don't want to lose you too much there. Please ask questions at any point during the webinar using that chat box, and we will definitely address them. We encourage that you ask questions if you're confused. And as far as pronouns, the pronouns that I use are he, him, his. And when we get to Mika and we do the introductions, we will hear from her. So let's head on over to the next slide. And Mika's going to...
Hi, everybody. So I'm Mika. I'm the Central Regional Youth Partner here at Youth Power, and I've been working with Brennan to kind of create this initiative in this webinar. So here you see listed just a couple of basic definitions. So LGBTQ, we'll probably use that a lot, stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning. There's a lot of other letters that often are kind of like put on the end of that too, but just for the sake of today, we're just going to go with LGBTQ. As you can see, the definition for transgender, trans woman, cisgender, I think this one is important when we talk about this stuff today. So cisgender describes somebody who identifies with their gender that was assigned to them at birth. So myself, I was born female and I still identify as female. I use she, her pronouns, and like it says right there, someone who is not transgender. So you might hear us kind of talk about the word cisgender, and essentially it just means the gender that you were assigned to at birth that you still identify with. Drag queen is another one that we're going to kind of talk about today, someone who dresses in feminine clothing and performs very stereotypical and exaggerated gender roles of women. So I'm sure that some of us have even might seen somebody who's been a drag queen on TV, and it's very typically speaking is somebody who is dressed up in feminine clothing, and it's very lots of makeup and lots of hair, so those exaggerated features. So I just want to talk a little bit about Youth Power and what we do. So many of you may be familiar, might not be familiar with Youth Power. So we are Youth Power. We're a New York State network of young people who have been labeled and are seeking change. Together we've decided to speak up about our experiences because no one knows what it's like more than we do for ourselves. We offer peer-to-peer mentoring, and we empower young people to be active citizens, aware of government operations, their rights, and the ability to use their voice to influence policy, practice, regulation, and law. We're young people helping other young people and sharing availability of self-help and peer support while changing systems so that young people get the support with the respect and dignity that they deserve. So, oops. A little bit about me really quick. So my name is Mika. Again, I'm the Central Regional Youth Partner. So I cover 20 states of New York State, and I'm trying to think what else. I think that's it. Again, I identify with she, her pronouns, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Mika, you covered 20 states? That's impressive.
Oh, yeah, right? Counties.
Oh, good. I was going to say, you didn't tell me something. Awesome. So my name is Brennan. I'm 26 years old, transgender and queer. I have been part of the mental health system for a number of years now, and I've been doing activism and advocacy in the LGBTQ community and the mental health community for the last 10 years. I'm very passionate about this stuff, being a member of the community myself, and I'm really excited to be here today and to be able to share some of this information. So thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy.
So really quickly, as this webinar is called Pride Month webinar, I just wanted to touch base and kind of cover what Pride means. So you will hear a lot today about Pride Month. So Pride Month essentially means that the month of June is celebrated to celebrate our pride that we have within the LGBT community, and that's to honor the Stonewall Inn riots that happened in 1969 in Manhattan. So today Pride looks different than what it used to look like in years past, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But there are Pride Month events can look like very many different things. There's Pride parades, there's festivals, but there's also other initiatives that some agencies or individuals might hold to. So essentially, Pride Month is a celebration of LGBT history and experiences.
Thanks for sharing, Mika, and for everybody who's just joining, thanks for coming on. We're just about to talk about some of the history of the LGBT community, so you're just in time. So to give you a little bit of background before we kind of get into Free to Be, the network that we talked about, so in the 1950s and 1960s, it was illegal to be openly gay or LGBT. That gay was was the phrase that was used at that time, but we were really talking about the whole community. It was illegal to serve gay people alcohol, and it was even illegal for gay people to dance in public, among other things. And gay establishments or places where gay people could gather and kind of safe havens were shut down and raided on a regular basis. Cops would go in there and they would check identifications, and if you didn't have an identification on you or if you were dressed in drag, you would be arrested, and it was never a pretty thing. It was usually violent. So we can switch over to the next slide. So the Stonewall Inn, if you have heard about LGBT history or Pride, you may have heard about the Stonewall Inn before. The Stonewall Inn is in New York City, and this bar, as well as others, were safe havens to meet others, as I mentioned. And in 1969, on June 28th, so we're talking almost 50 years ago, it this day was a turning point in the history of our community. There was a raid at the Stonewall Inn around 1 in the morning. Police went in and basically the patrons in there just had it. They were completely done with being discriminated against and the violence they were experiencing, and they decided to fight back. So they threw bottles at the police officers, and from there it just turned into a huge riot. And this actually lasted 3 days, and thousands of people were involved. Actually, by the time from the person throwing the bottle at the police officer to the time that the other police officers arrived at the scene, there were already 1,000 people outside of the bar. So people, this was just the spark for everything to happen. And the person who's sort of credited for starting the whole riot that night, her name is Marsha P. Johnson, and she was a trans woman of color. And she's really the one who helped, start the trans rights and activism movement with that happening that night. So, Mika, do you want to continue on that?
Yes. So a little bit more about the Stonewall riots. I'm sorry, one second. There you go. Organizations formed after Stonewall to advocate for rights. So during that time, you saw a lot of organizations and initiatives kind of formed. Just for an example, STAR was an organization that was formed by Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, both who are trans women of color. It's also important to really understand that trans women of color and trans people within the Stonewall riots really were spearheading a lot of these efforts. So this was really where the LGBT liberation movement originated and really started to gain a lot of momentum. So the history of the first Pride Parade, we talk about it, Christopher Street Liberation Day. You can kind of see it on that picture that's on the side. So June 28, 1970 marked the first anniversary of the Stonewall riots with an assembly on Christopher Street in New York City. This is a little bit different than what we think of Pride today. Again, as I said earlier, Pride today, we kind of think of festivals and parades and lots of other stuff. The first Liberation Day initiative was solely a political demonstration for equal rights and protections. So more of the advocacy work that we're still seeing today, but solely the political momentum that we need in order to gain those protections that we're looking for. In 1991, the first Pride celebration, as we kind of sort of know it today, happened. It was a celebration of queer life and sexuality, in addition to the political and social demonstrations that also originated back in 1970. Go ahead, Brennan.
Thank you.
Yep.
So for the LGBT history, it's really important to remember the origin of Pride. As you can see, Stonewall was a turning point in our history because of the activism and the action that it inspired. And in addition to that, it still serves as a reminder of the discrimination and violence and the brutality that LGBT people faced less than 50 years ago, and we continue to face, unfortunately. And it's especially important to realize the role of trans women in the Stonewall riots. The start of the entire movement and activism and the formation of these organizations is, this credit goes to these brave women, and a lot of times, most of the time, they are completely left out of the conversation. And a lot of people, even in the community, don't know the history of Pride and where we came from. And it's really important to understand this this part of history. So, LGBT history and why it matters. So, why would this matter to someone who is not LGBT? So, discrimination and violent crimes are happening every single day. You probably hear about some of them on the news, but we don't hear about them all the time, and we are definitely misrepresented in the media, so that is something to keep in mind. 41% of trans people attempt suicide, and 92% of youth hear negative messages from peers, their schools, and the media about LGBT issues, and 68% of youth hear negative messages from elected leaders. Those statistics are extremely high. And this can show you why we need a change in the way that we teach people about these issues. So other reasons that this matters is that we have a lack of competent care and educated providers. And one thing that's especially important to point out is privilege. And privilege is never having to think about it. So we're talking about marriage, healthcare, legal documents, physical safety, relationships, jobs, religion, housing, etc. These are all things that LGBT people have to think about and navigate, and sometimes we lose those things. I mean, in more than the majority of the United States, you can be denied or kicked out of housing just because you're transgender. Unacceptable. And when we have the gay marriage movement, a lot of people say, oh, gay marriage passed, that's really awesome, and the idea is kind of like, well, we're done now. But really, we're not done just because gay marriage passes. That's really just the beginning of really getting equal rights for everybody. So accessible networks are needed to connect people so they can receive this support and they can receive these resources. A lot of times we don't have that privilege of being able to get those things. It's very hard to find people that you can trust, and it's very hard to find whether it's pride organizations or groups. Just because you find a group doesn't mean that it's always the right fit for you for whatever reason. So it's very important. Yeah. Did you want to talk a little bit about Free to Be, Mika?
Yeah. So Free to Be is the new name that we here at Youth Power are
Hey, Mika, your audio cut out. Are you having some issues maybe with the computer? We still can't hear you. Are you on mute accidentally? Well, let me read this slide while Mika tries to um, figure that out. I'm going to go ahead and read that for you, Mika. Try to talk one more time, Mika. Now you're still muted. Okay, I'm gonna read this slide. Maybe you can look at that for a minute there. So for Free to Be, the idea behind our name came from wanting to ensure that there's a network for LGBTQ people that is inclusive and welcoming from the get-go. So whatever identity you may have can fit in there because it's free to be. So we accept that. And if you identify as being asexual or transgender or intersex or questioning, queer, etc., this is a safe place. And free to be means just that. You're free to be you, and you're accepted here. And we have a quote at the bottom. I want to be able to support you, but first I ask that you support me. So working together and creating networks where people are able to be themselves. So next we were going to share kind of our personal stories and go into that a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and start us off with that. So as I mentioned, my name is Brennan. My pronouns are he, him, his. So I've lived and traveled throughout New York State, and I've met people from all walks of life, during my travels. And what has always struck me the most is that we tend to have so much more in common with people than differences, and that's regardless of our backgrounds or whatever labels we may use. And through these people, I have been introduced to various kind of like networks of people, right? Nothing official, just people who know people. And upon meeting people, it wasn't long before I was thinking to myself, like, where is this network for my community? And like, how can we make this happen? And how do we reach out to each other when sometimes it's just hard enough to step outside of our own houses? How do we reach each other when there's so much hate and stigma surrounding us and suffocating us most of the time? Having experience, in the mental health system myself, I understand some of the additional obstacles that are faced by also being LGBTQ and being part of the community. And the questions that I was asking myself suddenly became that much more complicated. The answers didn't seem simple anymore. It wasn't just about, going downtown to the clinic and getting help. It was much more difficult. So having peer support and seeing that there were people like me is why I'm able to be here today. And I'm incredibly grateful for the role models and peers that have influenced me in ways that I can't even describe. And I was so grateful for them, and it really wasn't even until I had younger people reaching out to me for advice and help and thanking me for what I could offer them that I truly realized what a difference somebody can make in another person's life. It is incredibly lonely and discouraging and difficult to feel that you're on your own, or even worse, that your own community isn't healthy for you or isn't working out for you or isn't accessible for you. So where do you turn in that case? That's the question. And that's the first question a lot of people are going to ask you. So what are you going to do? Well, imagine this. You are 17 years old. The closest Pride Center is 2 hours from you, and they're not competent about trans issues. Your parents don't accept you, and you don't have a car anyway, right? So you can see kind of where I'm going with this, that sometimes we offer resources to people and we truly have good intentions, but ultimately they're inaccessible to people. And again, that's not out of malice, but it speaks to the fact that we need a broader network that people can connect with. So networks like this and Free to Be need to exist in order to offer those safe, accessible, and knowledgeable spaces. Having a statewide network, and being part of Youth Power and having that already established and having such awesome connections and relations with people throughout the state, that is something that can be offered to people. We understand the differences in different regions and the certain needs that people have, and we want to help people and we want to use that to our advantage in order to reach people. We, Mika, myself, other people that are becoming involved, we are all LGBTQ. We fall under that kind of spectrum somewhere, and we're part of the community. We have experience in these different systems, so we understand what it's like, and we're here for the right reasons because we really want to help people. So even in my experience living, in Albany, I will hear about this really great resource that's available right in Albany that I've never heard of. And I'm really active in the communities here, so that says something to me, right? That we're not linked up and we're really not communicating with each other in the best way that we could. So it would be great to know about those things and to have other people know about those things as well. Um, you know, that's the idea behind this, and that's been my experience as being part of the community. So I'm really excited to be able to be a part of Free to Be.
Hi, Brennan. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm really sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. So I'm on my phone right now. I will just be talking instead of sharing my webcam. I wish I got to hear more of your talk, but I'm sure it was wonderful. So thank you, Brennan, and everybody else for having patience with me. I'm really not quite sure what's going on right now on my end. So a little bit about me and my experiences. So I kind of sat and I thought about this for a little bit, what I wanted to share, what I didn't want to share, and I really wanted to share the things that have helped in my resiliency within being part of the LGBT community and going through the ups and the downs and the twists and the turns kind of thing. So shameless little my favorite. On the left is a picture of my 3 dogs who are really actually a big support for me. I love coming home at the end of the day and having oh my gosh, I just had a really busy day and I come home and I see these 3 little cute faces looking at me. They really, really help me just kind of like be in a safe space within myself and really just kind of like stay playful and just kind of like not take things so seriously. So the black one, her name is Lulu. The middle one is Penelope, and the other one is Rosie. The other picture that I have up there is a picture of me and my partner. This is one of the photos that we used for our engagement photos. We are going to be getting married well, we're already married, but we're going to have our wedding in October, this coming up October, and they really are pivotal to my recovery overall with my mental health and everything that's been going on in my life. So I wanted to share that because it's really important to me, and I feel like to a degree, in order to understand me, you kind of got to understand my support systems and what kind of helps me get going. So myself, I identify within the community. I identify more with the label queer than I do anything else. I came out when I was 14. I'm originally from the Watertown-ish area, so like Watertown, Fort Drum, and those surrounding little towns. And growing up, I didn't have anybody that I felt really represented me in the media or even surrounding me. I felt really alone in my journey of like coming to terms with myself and telling people, and I had some really kind of like awful experiences when I did come out to people. So it's a mission of mine to make sure that I work not within just the LGBT community, but with youth overall to kind of help them really find their voice and be assertive with their voice and be proud of their voice kind of thing. I did catch a little bit of the end of what Brennan was mentioning, and I get that when he says that he's pretty involved in the community, but then all of a sudden something comes up and he doesn't know, which is alarming and it is concerning. And I think that a lot of times, unfortunately, at least in the central region, I can't really speak to other areas, but the resources are very scattered for LGBT youth or LGBT people in general, and that kind of in the long run ends up hurting us. So it's really important to understand why we need more resources, why we need more initiatives such as Free to Be to kind of collect everybody all together within all of New York State and really just put our heads together. At Youth Power, that's what we do typically anyway. We work with agencies and we work with service providers, and we like to sit down and have a collaborative kind of meeting and really think about how we can better serve people and how we can really hear youth voice. So again, in my experiences, when I was a young person, I felt really silenced. I didn't have anybody that represented me. And I kind of got to a point where actually the whole coming out process was kind of hard for me. I didn't have there wasn't technology like there is today. There wasn't Facebook and all that stuff for me to kind of rely on other people. So the only people that I had, unfortunately, were actually not good people in my life, and I kind of got dragged down in that. But even though we don't have a whole lot of resources within the central region, that doesn't mean that we can't team up with each other and kind of have different ideas and really bring our youth together. I'm excited. I personally think that this is a really good initiative, and I believe that by having everybody who wants to be a role within the community and the LGBT community can come together regardless of our views and everything else, and really provide some quality supportive services. And I say supportive services because that's especially what a lot of our LGBT youth need, is to know that they're supported. There's so many different, go back to the statistics, different, messages that are being told to them through media and online, and at the end of the day, they kind of need somebody to kind of come to and say, hey, like, maybe I do need to go to a group, or where is there even a group? Sometimes individuals don't even know how to ask about, wait a second, there's a group that I can go to? And so Free to Be, the idea of it is to really bridge those gaps and make sure that individuals know, oh, okay, like if I wanted to, there's a group that I could go to. If I wanted to, there is, I don't know, an event going on or something like that. Because I know when I was younger, if I had had that connection, that really would have made it a big positive influence in my life. And again, to what Brennan was saying, unfortunately, the resources that we have within New York State are so scattered that myself, who was in the Watertown area at the time, the only resources that were available were in Syracuse. And as a youth who at the time didn't identify with their sexuality and didn't feel comfortable to come out and confide in my parents and my friends, how was I going to ask if I could go to a group in Syracuse? So those are just some talking points that I wanted to make sure that I covered. And again, at the end of the day, when I come home, looking at those cute little faces, all three of my dogs, and having a supportive partner really has helped me and will continue to help me with the vision that I have to help others to create this network to really make sure that we do have a solid community. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So a little bit more about the Free to Be network. So it's I'm sorry, peer support throughout New York State, connecting young adults with LGBT leaders and providing resources. So again, that whole idea of networking. This isn't just a youth initiative. We also need some adult peers to definitely be there to support young LGBT people, but to also provide resources and make sure that we are connecting people so everybody knows and they're aware that there is something like that out there. We really want to reiterate that this is a safe space, so we understand that maybe some people are at different levels of being comfortable with discussing, either their sexuality or their experiences. And we really want to reiterate that this is a safe space. What's said here stays here. If you are talking to either myself or Brennan or probably one more of our regional youth partners who is going to join this initiative and really try and spearhead it, what you say with us stays with us. We have to respect confidentiality, and we really want to make sure that we maintain that safe space, because ultimately that will build rapport. It's also important to understand that right now we're in our planning stages, so we really want and need the awareness and input to advance us to start cultivating this network and this initiative a little bit more. This is inclusive of various experiences and otherwise marginalized folks, so that's really important. But also understand that this is a team effort. It's not one person leading the torch and everybody else follows. It's everybody coming together, building each other up, and really doing the teamwork. If this is something that you are interested in, you certainly can help, whether it's an organization or an agency. Purely spreading the word is a way of you helping out this initiative. If a youth or young adult, either yourself or somebody you might know, would like to join the team, you can share your needs and input and help us really shape moving forward. So as I mentioned a little bit, at least one of our other regional youth partners is interested in the being more involved. Of course, the rest of our regional youth partners are more than welcome as well, but we want to make sure that if you have somebody that you need to go to, that all of our regional youth partners can certainly help you out and either get you involved or point you in the direction to be involved. And also, last but not least, understanding that this is a statewide network. This is all of New York State, which means that there's a lot of resources that we have to cover and that we have to learn about. And I think the learning about piece is really important because we need to know what kind of things are involved in a group or an agency, and what kind of services that somebody who would like to be a participant of those, what they're going to get out of it, kind of thing. So now Brennan and I are going to talk about the wrap-up and the action steps. Brennan, did you want to mention anything before we go ahead?
I think that was great.
Okay. So would you like me to talk about this, or would you?
You can start out if you'd like.
Okay. So again, like we talked about in the slide before, spreading the word is a huge piece of this. Word of mouth is also very huge. So that's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about this Free2Be network. We will be sending out a survey sooner rather than later, where we can get some feedback from everybody, here, give you an opportunity to talk about what you thought of this webinar today, but to also kind of give us an idea of what things you would like to start talking about to move forward in this initiative. Of course, sharing your thoughts and joining the network everybody's more than welcome. We definitely want to hear the thoughts and ideas that you have. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of this. If we can get an idea of everybody's concerns or areas that they would like to cover more, or just any thoughts in general, it gives us a really good foundation of where to start and where to move towards. This webinar today is being recorded, so it will be available up on our website, which will be emailed out to you at a later date. And of course, you can reach out to myself or Brennan if you'd like to become more involved. And again, if you reach out to your regional youth partner, they can also help assist you getting involved as well. We just want to make sure that everybody hears us loud and clear that there is a space for you in this network. Whether you're a young adult or an agency, connections, safe spaces, and resources are imperative. They are needed. We need these connections and these resources and to learn about things in order to really build up this network. There will also be There'll be a couple emails heading out. So the survey link, you will get an email if you signed up for this webinar, a recording of the information to access the recording of this webinar, and additional contact information will send out via email. So if you notice at the bottom, free2be@youthpowerny.org is the email you can use. You can also, if you have the contact information for a regional youth partner, you can also use that as well.
Thank you for sharing, Mika. And I also just wanted to stress the importance of the survey. That's really important for us to be able to get feedback. And in the survey, we're trying to get feedback on what you think would be important issues to address for LGBTQ youth and young adults in the state, and where you think things are at now. How do you feel like a network like this would be helpful to people? So it would be really great to get your input and feedback, and that will help us go forward. So we look forward to that, and if anybody has any questions, we would be happy to address those now. So let me just take a look over here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so someone asked, is it possible to also obtain a copy of the PowerPoint presentation in addition to the recording? Yes, when we send out the email with the recording, we can definitely include a copy of the slides so that you can have that. So we will definitely get that out to you. Did anybody else have any questions or comments, things that they want to share, ideas? We have a few minutes, and we would love to hear that from you guys. Or if you just want to tell us how awesome you think we are. Sure, let's see here. Okay, so someone said we are looking to identify connections for individuals in the Orange County region. I can get in touch with you about that, and I see who that is who asked, so I will get in touch with you about that. How can I learn who is a representative in the Hudson Valley area? I can also get in touch with you about that. That would be me. So I will do that. And we got a message that says you did a great job. Thank you. So we're really glad that you enjoyed it. Did anybody else have any questions before we wrap up? Or if you have suggestions, that would also be very helpful.
I just wanted to add too, I know that I had a couple people also that were interested in this webinar but weren't able to make it today. So if you have anybody who you think might be interested in reviewing this after the recording is available, feel free to pass it on. The more the merrier. And also if they have any input or ideas, send that information our way because it's definitely needed.
Great. I think we're going to, oh, hold on a second. We do have another question. Are there specific resources for individuals who are developmentally disabled and also identifying as LGBTQ? Off the top of my head, I don't know if there are any that have been combined and put together into one resource. There probably have been. It depends if you're talking about New York State specific and what kind of resources you're looking for as well. But that is definitely something that I can look more into and that I would be happy to email out to anybody who is interested in that.
I have to say, the resources that I'm thinking of that do combine the developmentally disabled and individuals who are LGBTQ, fortunately but unfortunately, in my experience, they have been on college campuses. I haven't seen any really that I can think of that are community exclusive.
Yeah, I think also that was a really great question because, you know, we are across systems and this is the kind of stuff that we're doing. So we want to address all of these things. And there are bloggers who write about these kinds of things, like the intersection of having disability and being part of the LGBTQ community. And I would be more than happy to send out those resources as well. And I know some articles that have been written by people, as well as, you know, as well as videos on YouTube. I think that YouTube can be an excellent resource. We tend to think of maybe text sometimes when we think of resources, and you know, there's some really awesome people out there doing stuff who you know, maybe don't blog or aren't able to do that. So I will be happy to look into that and send that out along with the email. So thank you everybody for joining. We hope you enjoyed. Please keep an eye out for that survey. You'll be getting that probably right around the beginning of July once we get everything compiled and I look up that information. So everybody enjoy the rest of your lunch hour, presumably, and we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Pride.